Hi, my name is Reina, and this is Chow and Tell. Sometime back in the early 2000s, I think it may have been 2001, I met a man named T. Colin Campbell. He was a professor, still is, at Cornell University, and he's become very, very well known for his outlook on eating, and especially because he's done a lot of research and himself has found that a diet that excludes animal products has tremendous benefits for health. In his case, he's found that it's true for him, and he's actually a very, very lean, fit guy in his, I don't know how old he is now, but back then, you know, he was a well-seasoned man already, and but you couldn't tell. He was really, really in shape, very with it, and very quick on the draw. And I remember being really impressed by him. He's done a lot of writing and is very well respected in academic circles and circles outside of there as well that have to do with food. So that was my first introduction to what has then been termed veganism or eating vegan. And since then, there's been so much more development around that kind of food lifestyle. And more these days, I hear about it, and I find myself often trying this way of eating as well. But to shed a little more light on it, I wanted to bring in some people who've been doing it for a little longer and a little more seriously than me. Please welcome my very dear friends, An Li and Barun. Welcome to the studio, guys.
Thanks.
Hi, it's great to have you here.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and I met An Li actually through a yoga class. An Li was my yoga teacher, the best that I found in town, actually.
Very kind.
It was really good. It did me a lot of good, and then I think from there a friendship blossomed that is still alive and kicking today.
It's
blossoming now. But over that, I think we've shared so many similarities, and you've been to India many times. Probably been to many places that I've never been to. And then, of course, there's this common love of food, of all kinds of food.
Yeah.
They're both very great cooks, and Barun as well, her husband, and his own person in his own right, with your hidden T-shirt, which you won't talk about. So yeah, I met these guys, and we've had a few really wonderful food gatherings, potlucks and whatnot. And one of the things that I remember being struck by right from the beginning was the fact that both of you guys eat vegan. And I'm just really curious about the entire story of like how you got there and how you sustain it, and I don't know, like what got it going.
What got it going? I've been vegetarian since I was 15.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
just out of my own choosing. I had friends who were brought up vegetarian, and their whole families were vegetarian. They were American. Oh no, gosh. I'm turning into American. They were Canadian, so they were.
You're originally from
yes,
from Canada, from the Toronto area?
Yeah, Guelph.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the city near Toronto, where I grew up. And so it was already very much in the culture of my high school or where I grew up. So, and then I started eating some seafood while I was in my 20s, and then went back to being vegetarian. Especially traveling in India, it's best to avoid.
It's easy
meat.
too to eat vegetarian.
Yeah, and then I met this guy, and he was an omnivore at the time.
Yeah, so becoming vegan, I think, was probably my decision.
Yeah.
Sustaining a vegan lifestyle is more her thing, because I don't cook that much. But
so how did you? How did you come to that decision?
It was
my fault.
It was purely an ethical decision. I actually was very much an omnivore.
Yeah.
And I remember so in my household my mom ate mostly vegetarian food, just as often many Indians do.
Yeah.
But we ate meat, generally speaking.
Now you grew up in the U.S.
I grew up in the States for the most part. For the first 4 years of my life or so, I was in India.
Okay.
But I would oftentimes have debates with people who are vegetarian, and not put a lot of value in their arguments for why they were vegetarian. And the main reason why I would think that was because, the reason would be as follows. Well, I don't consider a lion to be unethical for eating a gazelle, so if we're made to be able to eat meat, why should I think that it's unethical for me to eat meat, right?
So you had sort of the nature's way
yeah, I mean, it's
being an omnivore.
Right, so if we're going to think of ourselves as part of nature and create these rules based on some sort of standard like that, then I couldn't find a particularly compelling ethical argument at the time.
Right.
And I couldn't find anybody who was at that time able to provide me with a better one, right? Of course, there's very good health reasons to not eat red meat, and there's, people have religious reasons for doing it, and that's kind of their thing.
But you were looking for some logic, like
I was looking for
something that made sense.
Right, like I didn't personally have a compelling religious reason for it, right? That wasn't my thing, and I was a young guy. I wasn't particularly worried. I wasn't eating red meat every night or something. That was a really big problem that I was going to get heart disease or something.
Well, a lot of people do for environmental.
And people do for environmental reasons as well, which is also legitimate. But the ethical thing was really where it came into light for me. And I think the fundamental thing that I came to realize, and this was after spending some time in Nepal at monastery.
Well, you also read Tom Reagan's book.
That was after, though.
Okay.
And kind of the fundamental distinction at that place there, at the monastery, they weren't eating any meat because Buddhists oftentimes usually don't.
Yeah.
And the thing that I realized was that there's this big distinction in how you think about ethics of what is the least you are compelled to do and what is the most you can do, right?
Okay.
And so the argument that I was putting forward that before is really an argument about what the least thing that you're compelled to do. So can I get away with eating meat?
For any health reason or religious reason to eat differently from what you were eating, for example?
Well, not just that. I mean, from an ethical perspective, the argument was, well, I can get away with eating meat because I'm made to be able to eat meat, right?
Right.
But that's different from saying, do I have to, and would it be better for me not to? Not like, would I be a bad person for eating it, but would I be a better person if I didn't do it, right?
Okay.
And I like animals. I don't like the idea of killing them.
Yeah.
And
can I do less harm?
Can I do less harm, right? And I don't. Fundamentally, I realized that the only thing that was causing me to eat meat was that I was attached to it, right? I like the flavor. I like the ritual of getting a burger, whatever it is. And I realized that there are very few things in my life that I am so attached to that if I think about the idea of, oh, well, something had to die for me to have this.
Yeah.
I'm not that attached to it, right? I shouldn't be that attached to it, was my feeling. And so then I stopped eating meat at that time. But it was for a very brief period, maybe 3-4 months when I was vegetarian.
This was while you were in India? Or?
Around that time, and when I came back, maybe for a couple months.
Were you also? Yeah. Were you there as well? Or?
Yeah, we were there together. We were traveling together.
So up until then, you guys were together, but eating.
We were together.
Oh, you weren't.
So we met in Nepal.
The little romance story here as well. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So yeah, we hadn't met. He was an omnivore. I was a vegetarian.
But
vegetarian meets omnivore.
Yes.
And then
I was
and one is converted.
Yeah.
Well, I should say I was content to be a vegetarian. I never felt like I needed to eat meat. I just enjoyed eating meat. I just wasn't compelled not to eat meat either, right? Yeah. And then, but I would still, at that point, I switched to being vegetarian because, well, you're not killing the animal, and you're getting milk from a cow, you're not hurting it. You're getting eggs from a chicken, you're not hurting it. And then that's when I read Tom Reagan's book. Empty Cages.
Oh, I haven't read that one, but is that
he's a Berkeley ethicist, philosopher.
Oh, right.
No, that's Peter Singh. But Tom Reagan might also be from Berkeley.
He's also from Berkeley. Okay. Yeah, they're all there.
That was I read a couple of these books back to back. But what that book, the way it changed my thinking was this idea that I had, that I think most people have, that when you get milk from a cow, you kind of envision this farm where the cow is sitting there and somebody's milking it, and you're getting milk in a pan, in a bucket, and then you're doing whatever. Same thing with the eggs, right? What we've kind of, as children, are raised seeing, right, in cartoons or in whatever sort of kids shows and in idyllic movies. And the reality is that while that was how we would have gotten milk from cows.
In
and in some places,
in much smaller degree.
But unless you are going very much out of your way and live in a place where that type of farm is very accessible to you, the reality is that almost anywhere on this planet,
whatever% of
that's
all
not the way it is now, right?
So you basically, I mean, is this, you have industrial farming?
And industrial farming, honestly, I would rather kill the animal for meat than make it go through what they go through.
They suffer a lot.
So if I wasn't willing to kill the animal to eat its meat, then I felt like I really shouldn't be willing to torture it for a lifetime in order to get its milk or to get its eggs. Right?
Oh, so so you'd already made the no meat decision,
right?
And now you've moved to the no animal products decision. From
because
in a short span of time.
And within like 3 or 4 months, and it really is a very kind of logical sort of thing, right? If this is your bar for what you're willing to do, then you shouldn't be willing to do something worse than that, right?
You're a techie sort, right? So you have a flow chart for this.
Yes, he probably does.
But it makes sense. I mean, if it makes sense to you, it's like
logical.
whatever. Some people have emotional reasons for doing things, or very sort of fundamental, like an intuitive reason for doing something, and you can't even explain why you choose something versus something else. And in your case, you have a very well thought out way. Like you made this decision very consciously. It sounds
it was
like
definitely
you did a lot of thought and research and perhaps talking to people, you did a lot of vegetarian interviews, it sounds earlier, so.
And, we're lucky in this country and in a lot of the developed world that you can be vegan and still be healthy. That's not necessarily true everywhere.
Yeah, so I was going to ask that, because I have read a lot about, the vegan diet can also be really tricky for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would say when I was in high school, I knew vegans, but, I mean, we were 15 and no one's like, exploring a lot of cooking or a little bit, but mostly eating French fries and veggie dogs, which is not healthy at all.
So I mean, it's tricky because you can have
diet,
you can have a lot of like super processed foods. I see a lot of you're vegan, and they just eat like baked sweet, like it's only sweets, like refined flour and sugar.
Or you just get your soy product everything,
but it's super processed.
It's very processed. It's very different from like.
So again, I think my difficulty with it has been that, like, do you eat a lot of processed foods? For me, I would rather eat meat from a nearby farm that's been ethically raised than something that's been shipped from really far away, super processed, and had all these chemicals and additives to it.
Like, I'm going to get this
So the nearest local free-range thing available for me would make the most sense. I haven't reached
the
level you have yet, but
fair argument for sure.
And I pay fair price for it, and they're priced accordingly, so that you should not be able to get meat at the price you get them in the supermarket. It's a totally
it's 5 times more than a red pepper, which is kind of how much it is.
But it's a totally upside down costing system as well, which won't get into politics and lobby groups, but we can.
Well,
a longer show for that, but
there's a few different parts. I mean, one of the challenges with that is that if you're in a place like Cambridge, it's a little bit easier because we have a lot of farms in Western Mass or in New Hampshire or Vermont.
They're all very local and
But it's hard when you're at the grocery store because most of the labeling is quite misleading, and so something says it's free range chickens, then
cage-free,
or cage-free. It doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means, because they may mean something like, well, the chickens are all kind of cooped up in one thing, and they get half an hour free a day to be outside of their cage, right? Which is still torturous, right? It's kind of like when you're imprisoning people and you give them half an hour to be in a yard, right? It's the same idea.
So
how did you find all this in reading between the lines stuff? Like
there's a lot, if you just do a little reading, there's a lot of.
Like I found out, I mean, I did a lot of food research earlier this year in a different area, and I remember finding so many things that are really gray areas. Like saying something
Labeling
is natural means nothing. Like there's no regulation
around natural. That means it's artificial.
Anything, there's no. But I think there's regulations that are getting stricter as well. Like I know gluten-free regulations are coming into place. I think just from last year,
of
organic as well.
Very wishy-washy as well.
I generally follow the guideline that if you are going to go by the official rules and by what a large corporate entity, how they're labeling it, it's not 100% of the time, but more likely than not, it's not necessarily going to be what you think it is, because all the federal government created guidelines, ultimately lobbyists get their hands on
Yeah.
all of those bills well before they reach the vote.
I just heard about a book called Death by Food Pyramid. Have you heard of this? I forget the author's name. I think it's Denise Minkler. I'll have to look it up. I just was looking it up right before I came here. So I haven't had a chance to read it, but I just read the abstract. My father-in-law recommended it to me, and she just breaks down this entire sort of the guidelines, the traditional guidelines of the American food pyramid,
ridiculous, and
nutritionally how that's just a bust, like it's a really unhealthy, She doesnn't say one way or the other, she just really gives you the science to make much more informed decisions, and where all the politics and the lobby groups are influencing that.
Yeah, there was an article.
So, it's really hard to think about this. Sometimes it can get overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. You have to
make, like, how do I make a choice? How to make a good choice that I can sustain?
The harder it is to make a choice. And it's getting back to your, like, how do you eat? It's really hard to eat, and it compels you, if you want to be a healthy vegan, you have to cook, and you have to know how to cook, and you have to spend a lot of time doing it.
You guys, I know you guys were traveling recently to New Hampshire, and I remember you saying that the eating was hard.
Yeah,
up there. Like,
hard.
what were some of the challenges?
I was at a gas station getting like a banana because it is just
there's nothing.
Just not,
what can you eat?
Yeah.
We went to a place to eat breakfast, and
awesome.
The woman. I mean, aside, we won't talk about that place because it was terrible. But the
it was so terrible.
the woman
so
there
sad.
said this. I was trying to ask her. What was on the menu that we might be able to eat, and saying that we're vegan, we don't have any dairy, no meat, no animal products, and she looked at me and she was like, "What can you eat?" She's like, "What do you eat?" Like that, it was.
But she just said it in this
she was
really
unable
dramatic,
to comprehend the idea,
what
and
do
it's
you eat?
Yeah, that's actually not that. That's a reasonably legitimate question to ask, right? It was surprising to me that somebody in New Hampshire was asking me that, but in many parts of the world and many places, that's a reasonable question to ask because the diet is so reliant on animal products that one would not be able to imagine doing without it. But the ethics question is an interesting one. I should say that it's not so clear cut in all cases, right? No questions of ethics are. So, for example, if you are vegan and you say, well, I'm not going to wear leather, then that means when I want to buy shoes that are dress shoes, I end up needing to buy plastic, right? I mean, they're some form of synthetic material. They're essentially plastics.
Right.
Those plastics are derived from petrochemicals. Those plastics involve all sorts of
down
things.
the chain.
And if you think about, well, how many animals do those harm and all that sort of stuff,
the
right?
air, the water,
and the thing is, you can look at any ethical decision you make in your life, in any sense of your life, and in any case, a guideline, a rule will have places where it might cause more harm than good, right? No matter how.
And it's like if you follow down the rabbit hole, you're going to eventually find somewhere where the argument kind of falls apart, or it's a little weaker, and it's not. And that's what a decision is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But the way that I look at it is essentially you do the best you can with the information that you have available. And a lot of it is, how do you frame your state of mind so that you can try to cultivate a sense of continuing to try to do better things in the future, right? And that's...
Sure. So are you, have you ever slipped up? Like, have you...
Not intentionally.
Not intentionally.
I have been served food that they really thought had no meat that clearly did, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that sort of thing doesn't make me
something
upset.
with, like,
it's just what it is.
Butter or
I'm sure
something.
Yeah.
But never, like, consciously...
I haven't.
Did you crave it for a while? Like, how long have you been vegan? Have you guys been vegan?
Since 2008, mid-2008, I would
that
say.
8, 9,
Early
11,
2008.
14, 6...
Around
about 6 years?
A little over 6 years.
6 years.
Wow. 6.5.
That's a long time.
But it's
a lot of conviction. It's a lot of cooking.
It's a lot of
cooking.
Speaking of which, we should definitely bust out.
Cupcake?
So we have An Li has very kindly brought a beautiful vegan treat.
Yeah.
And what have we named this? We were chatting outside and we called it...
it didn't turn out exactly how it normally turns out, which is, this is a cupcake I make all the time. And it's kind of
it's very pretty.
More like a brownie consistency, but the top is like a cookie because I made it kind of big and then it collapsed on itself. So the top is like a cookie and it's sort of a brownie cupcakey
It's a brownie cupcake cookie goodness
coconut
thing.
with strawberry.
So this is coconut, strawberry, and this is coconut and strawberry.
Yeah,
on the
there's
edges,
actually strawberry jam in the batter.
Ooh.
It's adaptation from a common
Yeah.
cupcake recipe.
So now instead of the eggs, normally
There's
there would
no
be eggs
yeah.
and butter are the two
Yeah,
things I
I
can
guess
think
butter.
of, and maybe milk
maybe
or cream, but
yeah, no.
so
I use
what does
coconut oil.
Okay.
There's melted chocolate. It's a dark chocolate.
and it's a dairy-free
Yeah,
chocolate.
yeah. Most good quality. I would say all. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's.
But you have to look
true,
for
but
it, like you.
Yeah,
you know,
all the good
Yeah.
quality dark chocolate shouldn't
That's
contain
okay.
milk. Normally doesn't.
So it sounds like even
Sugar.
just by doing the vegan diet, you actually end up eating much higher quality foods. I don't know if you end up
Well, it's
you
because
guys do.
cooking
we
it's because she cooks the food herself
Yeah.
is what makes it higher quality as opposed to
And
eating
eating.
out
Yeah,
and eating
yeah.
processed
I mean,
foods. And
Yeah, eating out is
Yeah.
eating
yeah,
out is next
like,
to impossible
we
for
don't
us here.
buy
Like,
Yeah.
like I don't
Although,
know pre-made
you don't made it-
like I don't know frozen
tofu
something.
dogs and
yeah,
the- yeah.
frozen whatever pre-made. Like you could.
you
be
guys had
vegan
come over.
doing
They'd
that.
come over for a grill. We had a cookout we had, and you bought. She made homemade veggie burgers. They were so good. They were like
Thanks.
French lentils and black
Yeah,
beans, I think, and all
Though
these.
since then I have found a better recipe and I will try out before we
I
go.
will be a guinea pig. I'm volunteering myself on television.
It's in the New York
Doing-
Times. There's a video she shows you how to do it. It's a lot of work, more work than a normal homemade veggie burger, but it seems to solve the dilemma of the texture. So it has
I'm gonna try it.
a drier texture that's
Oh.
more sort
That
of-
was a really good veggie burger.
okay. All right.
I
Well,
have
that's
one
a
still
quick and
stashed
dirty.
in my
that's-
freezer for like an emergency
There were
good
so many
snack.
veggie burgers. But yeah, that's the one I made was quick and easy, and this other
It was
one
really
is
good.
much more involved.
I remember reading somewhere actually there was this it was another sort of eating lifestyle thing, and it was about eating whole foods, and if you want so it wasn't vegan, but they said everything kind of whole grain, whole unprocessed, basically just zero processed
Yeah.
anything, and part of it was if you want snack food or like treat food, like if
Yeah.
you want a donut, you can have a donut. You have to make the donut.
yeah.
Whatever you want, you
Yes.
have to make it.
Well,
and I was like, that's genius.
It is, and this is Michael Pollan's argument about about deep fried food and fast food places is that fast food has made it possible for us to eat unhealthily so easily. He's like,
Yeah.
imagine if you had to make your own French fries. You would do it like once a year because it's so much work.
And you'd
to
enjoy
cut
it.
and deep fry.
We
and-
had French fries in my house growing up. My grandfather loved them, and they were like thick cut fries.
Yeah.
And they weren't very often. Like it was an occasion. It's like okay,
Yeah,
Sunday,
it'd be a
in the
special
evening.
occasion,
Yeah.
What
not
should we
like
have?
every
Let's
day
have
for
we call
lunch.
them chips.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have chips, and they were fresh cut
Yeah.
potatoes.
Yeah.
Deep fried, and they would come out. They were still hot on like a newspaper. We didn't have paper towels.
Yeah,
They have
that's
newspaper.
British style.
Yeah,
the
and
the
chips
newspaper.
and anything that we had that was fried. And we had our food repertoire has a fair amount of
Has
fried
Yeah.
things.
food, yeah.
But they
Wow.
were fried, and there was
Yeah.
a big family thing, and like
Yeah.
there was a ritual
But
around it. And there's only
now-
so much you can be eating and cooking at the same time.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think now in our modern culture,
And we weren't eating in
that
the
stuff
car,
is
like,
so
while driving with a-
accessible and it's so
Yeah.
cheap, and that's the
It's-
problem.
yeah.
It's like, oh, I can eat that for $1. Why not? And
I think that's a good recommendation. I would say, like, if you're gonna eat it,
you
make
gotta
it.
make it.
We'll be eating a lot better or a lot less.
It's true,
Yeah.
and you
know?
appreciate
Yeah.
all the work that goes into something like that. And
Such as this.
yeah, you should have some because we've
And
been
for
eating
most of
cupcakes
this
all
stuff,
day.
Can I try some?
Yes, have some. Have
We've
the
been eating
cookie.
cupcakes all day.
Yeah, we've been
The
eating
cookie
cookies
brownie
all-
cupcake. Oh
yeah,
my
so
goodness.
the top is like a cookie, and
oh
it's a
my
little
God.
bit.
Can I dip it in this?
Yeah, you can dip in the
That's yummy.
strawberry sauce.
Mmm.
So it's crunchy. on
You
the
made the strawberry sauce too?
Yeah, I made the strawberry sauce. That was it was in the freezer. I had some extra strawberries, and when you have
That's
too many
yummy.
strawberries, you
Oh
make a
my
strawberry
God.
sauce. You
It's
like
like the
it?
best part of the brownie on that.
It's the
you know
burnt
that-
part on the
oh.
outside. Yeah, and then it kind of falls on
It's
itself.
very good. Will you not have some with me? Just
All right,
go-
all right. Well,
have a
I did
bite.
eat like 2 earlier today.
yeah,
We won't
So this is the
tell.
nice thing when you have some of these
Okay.
things, your taste adjusts over time.
Mhm.
So for example, on these sweets aren't quite as sweet as some of the things you'd get in the store.
This is perfectly
this
sweet.
Is
like
perfect
it's not,
for me now. Like because
this is what I would eat. Like I find the stuff outside too sweet. It's too sweet.
It's like you can't actually eat a serving of it because after
the
2
size
bites,
is too big.
yeah,
the sugar's too much.
But it also means that this has less oil and less sugar and less all that stuff than some other, like if you just got a cupcake from the store.
Yeah.
So if you have a couple, also, it's not actually quite as bad as if you have maybe one from
and
the
they're
store.
very satisfying, actually. I would feel like you wouldn't want to be stuffing. I don't know. It's very.
You appreciate it more. It's like I have to gorge on this giant
Yeah.
thing that costs $1 or something. It's like you know how much you paid to make that, and it's high quality. You know what's in it. It's all organic.
Oh really?
Yeah.
You try to eat organic as well as vegan. That's great.
As much as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just some stuff sometimes you want that you just can't get organic, and then I'll buy it.
Yeah.
It's not like I won't eat organic.
I like your balanced kind of, like you've made this decision and then you're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
And so you're not beating yourself up, because I know that for a lot of people, like they fail once, even by accident, and it's like, chuck it, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Right.
But this is kind of,
traveling
a friend
is the
told me
hard
this,
part.
like if something happens or you're not able to, you just simply resume. When as soon as you can, you simply resume your chosen path.
And the most challenging thing that I think people fall into is the idea that if they feel like something is very difficult, they kind of become defensive against it, and then they start doing the opposite even more, because then it makes them as a reactive sort of mechanism, which is kind of the worst of all possible options. But
this is so chewy and delicious.
Okay, good.
I'm going to post this recipe.
Yeah, sure.
If you don't mind sharing it. We'll post this on www.kitchen-intuition.com. We've got a couple seconds left, and so I will just thank you. I'm going to scarf this down afterwards. But thank you so much for being on this show.
For having us.
These guys are moving soon to the other coast, so I'm going to have to come
Over
visit
to
you.
Berkeley.
Yeah.
So, to Berkeley. You'll meet all your friends.
And I will say that since I'm noticing on this screen that my t-shirt just says war, that it actually says war is over. I decided to wear my hippie shirt since we were talking about
hippies
veganism.
War is like thoroughly in process.
It's not.
We'll
pray.
Over.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And see you next time, next week. Bye-bye.